Good day, good morning, good afternoon. I don't need to inflect my voice now because I've got the jingle, haven't I? Although Mark and I haven't heard it, so we have to role play that there was a jingle, even though Mark doesn't know what the jingle is. See, this recording thing is never it's never natural, even when you try and make it that way. How you doing, Mark?
I'm all right, thank you, mate. I'm all right. England are 286 for four, which is looking decent in the last Ashes test. So they just need to carry on, not lose many more wickets.
Well, thank you for the cricket update. I've got to say that I was never much of a cricket fan. I was more of a sit in the stand.
Shall I just hang up now? Call yourself an Englishman? Fuck's sake, unbelievable.
It's funny that that Evelyn Waugh, the loved one, the satire on Englishmen living on the west coast. It actually begins with it's all set up around snobbery around the cricket club, and being president of the cricket club being the most important thing. I worked at four companies in the Valley over the years, one way and another. Four different institutions, each of them engineering was Indian, Pakistani, Bangladeshi kind of dominated. Um, in each case, there was a cricket team, and there's a really strong culture of cricket around Silicon Valley, not carried on by Englishmen. Although a lot of Englishmen, of course, play. They were always quite disappointed that I was not a player. I'm not a player of anything, though, am I?
Not really.
I was in Vegas, and I managed to lose $8 when I only thought I was gambling $1. Like literally, it's all credit cards now. Have you been to Vegas and looked at the fruit?
Not for a while, no. Last gambling I did was at the MGM, but that was just a house tournament of poker where you bought in for I think it was like $95 or something, and there was like 30 or 40 people in. It was like 3 or 4 tables, and you just played till I think they paid out the top two. But it was worth having. Like the first was like $1,500, second was like $900, something like that. I came third, which was not so no pay. But it was quite fun.
And when you do poker like that, you can't see the other players' faces, so you're judging them based purely upon the way that they're playing.
Oh no! This was live. This was actually at tables when I was in Vegas, so you can see them. You can see all the other players at the table. So, but no, on poker games online, generally speaking, you can't. No. But yeah, similar in terms of betting strategies and stuff, but it is a bit different. I wouldn't profess to be particularly good at either. Jamie's better than me.
Yes. Why do you think that is?
I think he plays. He certainly plays more. But I mean, yeah, it's hit and miss. So he's decent at it. I think he's also probably a bit more ruthless as well, I suspect. Yeah, it's good. I mean, I enjoy it. It's good fun. But I haven't played much for a while. I opened my PokerStars account the other day and noticed that there was like $350 in there. I was like, shit. I didn't even remember. Last I remember having was like $100 in there, so I must have won some before I then stopped playing. So, yeah.
It's kind of a tawdry world, though, isn't it? I remember one of the last deals I did in London before I left London. One of the opportunities I was quite sad to walk away from as a tech salesperson was I can't remember if it was Betfair or if it was AAA, but one of the really big things that went on to be a really big gambling place. I met them in a pub in Leicester Square with a guy that I've kind of on and off stayed in touch with, like somebody who I was friends with. Like he was the tech guy, if you like, and I was the sales guy. And I remember about it, and we will eventually get to cars. There was a Carrera 4S up against the curb, like a 993 Carrera 4S up against the curb, and I remember looking at it and thinking it was kind of appealing, despite the fact that I was never much about the four-wheel drive. And I thought of that car just yesterday when my son and I were flipping through the latest Gooding well, it was not the latest Gooding. It was Gooding from Amelia Island, which is always super Porsche heavy. They had a lot of like, you know, a 935 and a 934 and an IROC Porsche. You know, they had like nice cars, but they also had uh, I would say three. I mean, I didn't stop and count, but it felt like three or four 993 4Ss, and I'm like, I, again, I'm just doubtful of the four wheel drive. The four wheel drive doesn't feel that pure to me.
No, I always suppose that they were more popular because they still had the sort of the pendulum handling a bit, and therefore the four wheel drive was more like it was more like you'd keep you on the road.
Oh yeah, I guess I'd not thought of it from that point of view. Is that why they're loved then? Are they considered super drivable?
I don't know, but like they did have the reputation, or at least in the generation before that, and maybe the one before that, of being a bit sort of lift off, oversteer, see through the hedge. Porsche corner at the
Yeah,
Nurburgring
yeah,
is the down, is the uphill right,
yeah,
isn't it? So
all of the all of the cars, the 60s cars and the 70s cars, and I would say the 80s ones really, certainly the, like, up to, was it 88 that they changed, that they went on to the 964. I mean, even I know I've driven two 964s, but my memory of a white one that I drove on the, just on a bit of dual carriageway outside Reading, um, was that the pedals floor hinged like a Volkswagen Beetle, and that I remember being really put off by that. That was, yeah. Don't know why that put me off so much, but it made it. I guess it made the car feel very old fashioned.
yeah, although they've mainly gone that way now, haven't they?
Yeah, I don't know. It was something to do with. I remember something to do with the. It was the way that my heel was on the floor, and I had to, like, maybe, I don't know, lift my heel up or something like that. Anyway, I was like, not. I was put off.
You were not digging it.
I was put off classic 911s by the pedals. Looking back, this was a 964 that was white, a Targa that was white. So, it wasn't exactly Porsche's finest moment, which was probably, I don't remember being put off by the colour. It was the pedal that put me off. I drove another one, another 964 that was a Guards red one that belonged to. Do you remember I worked for that dreadful recruitment company?
Mm.
There was the big boss's like lieutenant was this guy Charles Liddy. Charles, if you're listening, I never understood how you put up with Gary's abuse, but I see from LinkedIn you're doing different things now. So good on you. He had one. He had and he let me drive it. I remember him being nervous about me going too fast. It was a piece of road that I'd driven motorcycles along, so and it was. You know the other Porsche I test drove. Do you remember this? I was this because Amelia Island they had one of these as well. That was just like the one I drove when they were new, or maybe it wasn't when they were new. The 968 CS. Do you
Mm.
remember I test drove one of those?
I don't. I remember the cars.
I tell you what, you will
I'm.
remember. Do you
I
remember?
was more interested in that than the 911s of the period, frankly.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this to wit this story. Do you remember when we lived in Aldermaston? Do you remember near our house, like on the way to my office on the back lanes way, there was that long straight bit of road, but it was crowned. It was a B road. It was
Mm.
crowned. It was narrow and it had a bad surface, didn't it? Not like a terrible surface, but it had a surface which meant that more than 70 miles an hour was fine, but approaching 100 was not.
Mm.
That 968, I drove it along there and it was absolutely fine. I was really
I can believe that.
impressed with it along that piece of road. That's what I remember about that car. But you know what made me think of that car was how, despite that being awesome, everything else about Porsches at that time was a bit underwhelming. The interior wasn't that wow. It didn't have. Um, it certainly didn't have what a Jaguar's interior had.
No, interiors are weird, aren't they? Because I mean, I'm never that bothered if they. I'd rather they, like when I dropped that McGann off, the guy said to me, "Oh, it's nicer inside than I thought it would be," and it isn't bad inside, but it's nothing in comparison to a comparable, even BMW, let alone a Porsche of the same, 2015 or whatever. But I mean, I didn't give a shit. I mean, you're spending a whole load of money, and they spent all the money on the suspension and the other stuff, and putting a proper chassis in it. So, you can't complain. But yeah, people these days are quite finicky about that shit.
Um, I mean, I have a friend with a Cayenne GTS, a brand new Cayenne GTS, and it is lovely inside. I really feel like Porsche have raised their game around around interiors. Um,
Mm.
so they are better.
It always makes it heavy as fuck, though. That's sort of the problem.
Well, yeah, yeah, absolutely. They really are. I mean, all new cars are. But if you think of it, right, Porsche, most of the vehicles they make now have four doors. Like that's really
Yeah.
quite hard to get your head around, really, isn't it? It's quite, if you think of it, it's quite successful image building that they've done to give us the impression that they're still really a sports car maker, and of course they are because the pure products are that. But yeah,
Yeah, although you could argue these days they're a collector's car maker on the basis that if you haven't been on the list and bought at least three 911s or other sports products before, they won't sell you a GT3. They won't sell you any of these other special editions. So they're as bad as Ferrari now in terms of, good luck if you want to get a new car from them. All right? If you're buying a bog standard 911 or something like that, yeah, fine. But like, if you want one of the special editions, you need to have bought other cars, or they won't sell you one. So I spoke to someone about it at Goodwood and was lamenting the fact that his mate wanted to buy a GT3 and was told, "I'm sorry, sir," kind of thing.
I mean, my jaw is on the floor. You mean that when the crypto hits the moon, I'm not just going to be able to click order on that
I suspect not.
GT3 with gold wheels that my son has specced up?
I suspect not. And if you have to buy one second hand,
You mean that he's
add extra
carefully
money.
chosen contrasting leather stitch steering wheel and embossed Porsche logo replaced with my grinning face hand drawn on the on the that's not gonna
I fear not. I mean, I may be proven wrong, but
what is the
yeah,
what
I've had a couple of anecdotal stories suggesting that approaching the dealership and saying like, "So can I get a 911 GT3 then?" resulted in us, the amused chuckle and "What other Porsches have you owned, sir?" kind of conversation. So I know that stuff like the sort of Porsches that I've been excited about, like the Cayman GT4 and things like that when it came out, that was a sort of waiting list, forget about it. And there was one selling on some German version of eBay within 3 months for twice the sticker price that it sold for. I think it sold for 140 and one went on sort of a German car auction site for 300 plus euros. But
there's so those relatives of ours in Florida, one of the uncles has a brother who's been in this world of investable modern Porsches. I mean, again, right? I was looking at Amelia Island with Ollie, and it's a market I don't understand. I mean, as simple as there were two 930s, so these are like late 70s 911 turbos. We would call them. They're 930s. That way, I guess they've been designated. Now, I don't know. I mean, I never called them that in period. Car magazines never called them that in period. Either way, the first generation, the first car with a whale tail and the turbo, the real like put you in the hedge specials, right? Those cars. Two of them. One was like, I don't know, 200 to 300, and the other one was like 600 to 900. And I'm like, what? Has the other one been owned by the Aga Khan? Has it only done 1,700 miles from new? Like, did Ferdinand Porsche like conceive his last child in it? I mean, I don't know if Ferdinand Porsche has a child, but like what makes that car worth so much more? And with the thing with Porsche guys is going to be super. Yeah, I don't know. I don't care to know what the minutiae is. I just would want a 930 that I could drive, and if it got a stone chip, not be too broken up about it.
Yeah, I think yeah. I mean, increasingly, I'm looking at Porsche and thinking I'm not sure I want a 911. I quite like the idea of a Cayman or um, a Boxster, just a Boxster S with a stick, and that would be fine. I'm not even a Boxster S necessarily, but I like a little sort of chuckable hatchback, a little chuckable sort of rag top. Good fun, mid-engine.
The whole like bigger and fatter all the time that pervades the whole car market. I understand why they do it. You've got a bit bigger and fatter. Your kids have got a bit bigger, so this year's Accord needs to fit last year, like the customers from 3 years ago. I get that, so I get why the Accord needs to be the size of what used to be the Legend kind of thing. And the Civic is now the size of the Accord. I get why that has to happen, but at the same time, there's still um well, I guess what I'm saying is that I'm more interested in the smaller models as they come along. I'm more interested in the Cat than I am in the Fiesta. I'm more interested in the Boxster than I mean, I always say that. I always feel like I if now I realize I probably can't do this, but if I were ever to suddenly come into a lot of money, I would call the Porsche dealer and have a GT3, but I would also have a totally stripper white like Boxster, whatever the bassy stick shift, like as simple as you could have it, as simple and light as you could have it. Um, Only because I know that there's a difference between what you think you're gonna like and what the journalists say is, what Chris Harris waxes lyrical about. The difference between that and what actually fits your life. And I have a feeling that little Boxster might fit your life really, really well. On the other hand, I
Mm.
might feel about it like I do about the Fiesta. That it's like a marvelous car, but it's like just it's also too compromised. So that would be so small, wouldn't it? Like and uncomfortable and stick shift.
Yeah, but you live in the wrong country for the Fiesta. The Fiesta's a European car.
It is, yeah,
The ST, that's where it shines best because the roads aren't as big. The car parking isn't as big. It feels nippy and excellent, and the fact that you need to stir it up a bit to get it going is not a problem.
yeah. I actually don't find. I mean, I did a road trip out to Copperopolis to sort out the registration stuff. I found I can do that remotely now, so I don't need to go out there. But did the run out there, and you know what? More car. I don't really need more car than
Oh, it's fast. I mean, they're
if you
plenty
if
quick.
you stir it up, it's really fast, and
Mm.
because it's just the chassis is so awesome. Any
Mm.
turn that you encounter there is just an absolute pleasure. Um, I'm going to jump around on my agenda. Actually, we've stumbled into my agenda there. One of my agenda items was to talk a little bit about you have a Fiesta ST, I have a Fiesta ST. Um, I, I mean, in terms of a sort of running report, almost to talk about how you've been getting on with it. I mean, I've not done. It's not like I've done anything to mine in 17,000 miles, apart from knock a wing mirror off and break some other bits of body kit, which is annoying. But I guess I'm not planning to sell the car, so it's fine. So it now has at the front. It's about to get replacement front tires, and I was going to do all four because like I've never rotated them, so the rear ones are okay. And the sense that the economical thing to do would be just do one axle. But no, I just want the purity of the handling. I'm going to do all four. Um, and I'm probably going to do, I don't know, I might look around. I do tire rack for tires. So I might look and see if they can, like what they recommend. Or I might just,
I mean, I would get good shit for it anyway.
oh,
Pilot Sport
surely,
5
yeah,
or something like that. So,
yeah.
I mean, I know you will, but yeah, Pilot Sport 5s or something along those lines, I think,
So
um,
how many miles has yours done now? Has anything gone wrong? Talk.
48, I think. It had a clutch master cylinder. I think that's about it. I fucked off actually this week because some prick outside B&Q had spilled a load of paint on the floor, and we parked up and went for a Costa coffee and didn't notice, and then drove away and didn't notice, and I evidently must have driven through it. It was like it was a bit of a grim day, and someone had obviously dropped some paint coming out of the store and just left it all over the floor, and it spat up the bottom of the sills on the front and back, so like white paint splashes, which is very irritating. So. Um, I'm going to see whether it comes off, but I suspect it won't. In which case, I might have to get an insurance claim to get the fucking thing resprayed, which is extremely irritating.
Hey,
Um,
yeah, I would look at there's been a revolution in cleaning products, right? There's like a million, I dare say, Chinese chemists working to incrementally make better like cleaning products. I follow all these YouTubers, right? And the YouTubers are all sponsored by cleaning products, right? And the reality is I think there's a bit of an arms race going on. The bottom line is you would be surprised what you can do. I would urge you to stay away from the repaint because
oh, I don't want to have to do it if I don't have to. We have a geezer that comes and does the cars. I do the cars generally, but like once in a while when they're really shitty or like you're going to get them valeted inside and out, they could really do with it. We get Steve to come around and he does it. And he does a really good job. Nice guy. But I might clean them and then get him to come around and have a look at it and give me his opinion because if there's some sort of a jungle juice I can use to get rid of it, because I mean it's paint that's gone on over the top of whatever lacquer on top of the paint that was originally done. So there's the layers of stuff. So hopefully we can get rid of that
yeah,
shit without fucking.
there's like household paint for your bloody garage door sitting on top of lacquer and all of that. It's not been primed. It's not been. So it is with the right treatment. You would think it.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping.
So yeah, I would urge that before the repaint. Um,
But other than that, no, it's fine. I mean, it's like it's a Fiesta that has been injected with sort of steroids and stuff. So, stuff will go in it, I expect. But at the moment, it's 8 years old with 48,000 miles on it, and it's fine. It feels legit. Everything I like it still.
how are values
Yeah,
in Britain? Because here,
pretty solid at the moment. It seems.
yeah,
I haven't lost anything on the BMW in a year. It would appear. I had a glance and basically the same car for the same with like 4,000 and 4,500, whatever I put it on it in the last year, is still the same value I bought it for.
yeah.
Um,
So let's pivot onto that. Then let's talk about the BMW as well. M2, what year?
17, was it 16? No, 16. Um, yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I'm having the wheels resprayed because like I scuffed them when with Angie was in France, helping her get too close to the péage booth, and because there's this issue with basically it's annoying me at the moment. I might end up selling it just because there's too many fucking things wrong with it, and BMW didn't do me any favors when they sold it to me, so I'm going to take it to a different dealership to get them to review the stuff that I want fixed with it. I can't drive it because the wash wipe pump's broken. The aircon's rubbish, and I think they knew that they overfilled it with aircon, so it was like sort of mist coming out the vents when I bought it. So I was suspicious, and within 2 weeks it had stopped working properly. There's a juddering through the brakes, which explains why they put the new pads and discs on when they sold it to me as the last thing they did before they gave me the car, like 2 days before. Oh yeah, we put pads and discs around. I thought, brilliant, saved me 3.5 grand or whatever it is. But like, why? Well, they said, "Oh, it'll judder for a while. Don't worry about it. It'll go away." They're sports brakes. It's never gone away. Um, So, I'm part of the reason I'm getting the wheels resprayed is that if I have to sell it, I want them in pristine condition, and also I don't want them pointing at a few little scuffs done at 2 miles an hour at a péage and going, oh, that's why your brakes are juddering because
Yeah.
knackered the fucking wheels, which is utter bullshit. So yeah, so it's going in. I've got like service and extended warranty and like manual, all this stuff on it. So we'll see if they put it right properly. If they don't put it right properly, I'm just going to sell it and get rid of it. I like it, but I can't enjoy it properly because the brake juddering is because every time you come on the brakes at speed, like there's a juddering through the brakes, and that just doesn't inspire any confidence.
How many
So although I like the car to drive, huh?
miles does it have?
40 something, 44.
Yeah.
It shouldn't. I like the car, but unless they fix the stuff with it,
If
I'm
it's been
done.
abused, there's like 40,000 miles of abuse. Who knows?
Well, I mean, it shouldn't be. It's BMW used approved, but yeah, I mean, like, everything they did, the dealership did on the cheap, and it's like just disappointing. And they said, "Oh, we're going to get the wheels fixed because there's chips on it, and so therefore we need to get that fixed." Do you want them resprayed? I've told this story on this podcast before. They resprayed them the gold I asked them to, but they just sprayed it straight over black, so it came back a sort of weird bronze color, which is not what I wanted, and not what they offered to pay me
You
to
want to
do for
name and
me.
shame the dealer because we've got like a
Yeah, it was
audience.
Cooper's BMW, I think, or whatever it is, the one up in Colchester, or wherever. I'll have to look it up. Actually, I can't even remember.
Coopers in Colchester. Yeah.
But yeah. Essentially, I'll check and make sure that's correct because I don't want to shit talk anybody that wasn't. But yeah, it just overall disappointing experience. I like the car, but don't feel you can drive it properly and drive it hard. So I don't like the amount of tech on it, to be honest.
So it sounds like
There's not that much tech on it, but I still find it annoying.
So are you now thinking what your next thing will maybe be an older car with less tech but a low?
I would undo it and swap back to the Renault at the moment. Looking down the line of potentially living in France, one of the things that I was looking at idly the other weekend surfing for is, can you pick up old Clio 182s and stuff like that at reasonable numbers? And the short version.
Auto Scout. That was the app.
Well, the short answer is yeah, you can.
Yeah, you can.
There's stuff around.
Yeah.
And part of the value of living in France would be that we'd have more space. So I can put a garage up or put one of those outdoor cupboard pieces up if there isn't one of those wooden ones. And have like covered shelter for half a dozen cars and stuff. Well, I mean, the first thing I'll do is have some French stuff. Renault principally. Yeah, pick up a couple of hot hatches.
Amen to that, right? Because everyone goes on about Citroen and the quirky design and all of that. And yeah, Peugeot have this great Grand Prix heritage, with that car from 1912, was it, that has like the 16 valves and the smaller engine capacities, arguably one of the most revolutionary Formula One cars of all time. I mean, I get that about Peugeot, but I'm all about Renault from the French makers. I'm all about Renault sort of period. I feel like they.
I'd have a 205 GTI and stuff, but they've left the stable. There's too many of those. They're too old now. So you ain't going to get one for a modest price. But I mean,
also the whole point of the 205 GTI was a bit like muscle cars. They were great performing, but they were affordable. Whereas now they're not affordable. They're like so. For example, I was thinking the other day, like how cool it would be. I was looking at Sierra Cosworths and thinking how cool it would be if I was in a financial position to the next time I come to Europe, instead of having to put up with some bloody rental car, being able to just buy a Sierra Cosworth. And I'm like, no, it's a collector car. You couldn't leave it anywhere; it'd be stolen. Like it would, right? Because the kind of people who are into the,
Oh yeah, dude. I mean, like it's 60 to 80K for one of those things now, anyway. So I mean, they're a lot of money. And look, I mean, I would have the Saxo VTS. I would have one of those again if you can find one. I doubt you'd be able to find one. But the Citroen stuff, I'd be more interested in having one of that massive, ugly as fuck execubage thing they produced recently. I'd be interested in that because
what?
it's. I can't even remember what it's called. Their version of the 7 Series, Citroen did a massive one. But of course, it's Citroen, so it'll be comfy as
C6,
hell because of the suspension.
the C6.
So it could be.
Yeah, I
But it
follow.
looked forget.
There's a YouTuber called Up and Down with weird name, but he's basically a TVR mechanic on the south coast, and he has a rather dour, self-deprecating manner. But he clearly knows his stuff because he does TVRs, but he also does Citroens, and he has one of these C6s. And I think it is an awesome. I'm not into French cars, into Citroens particularly, but it's an awesome piece. I'm into Renault. I prefer. Your dad had that Renault Fuego GTX in the 80s. Those wheels that were the parallel
Mm,
slash design genius. Right?
mm. Yeah, that was a cool car actually. Yeah.
That,
Um,
and to wit, right the way through to your McGann, rather like Ford, they always got the styling language right. But I always felt the design had more flair than Ford. I always feel Renault have a bit more flair than Ford.
yeah. Um, I mean, look again. With the RS products, you know where they've spent the money. Um, it's not on the interior particularly. It's not unpleasant, and there was a few toys on there. I had a little screen, reversing camera, and stuff, so pretty well specced out for a hot hatch. But um, the interior isn't a patch on like the comparable Golf and things like that. So, but I'm not so fussed. But yeah, then that C6 thing, loads of toys, Citroen Uber cool suspension, and I wouldn't give a shit about it. So you could probably pick one. I mean, I'm guessing, but I expect the depreciation on massive French luxury cars is pretty terminal.
Horrible.
Yeah. So you could again um, probably pick up a pretty decent bargain on them. I would
I
suspect.
think the prices are ticking up now. I think you used to be able to get them really cheap, but
Oh,
and the
no.
other thing with I think with cars like that is the time to buy them isn't when they're working, when somebody else has ironed out all their faults, because at that point the poor blighter is into the thing, months of blood, sweat, and tears, and thousands of dollars in mechanic bills, right? So that's not the time to buy the car. The time to buy the car is when it's broken. But then you're in for the blood, sweat, and tears, right? Now, and
Yeah.
that segues me onto the next. I was going to talk about the old E55, which is
Mm.
now out of storage, and I did buy non-running for a low price and did spend more money to get running, and now it works. But my word, so that was, you remember I had it. I'd had it a week before I met you in Los Angeles with it,
Mm.
and we drove all around. And now, at that time, did it feel tired to you, or did it feel kind of all right? Just
I mean, it felt like it'd done a lot of miles, but it didn't feel particularly dog-eared.
yeah, not so much now. I guess the environment here, right by the beach, is kind of savage with the salt atmosphere.
Mm.
So it now looks like it's lived in northern England. It's all like it's got rust on every panel. It's got along by the sunroof. It's got like a hole, like you can get your hand in. Um,
Well, I mean, wouldn't it be worth getting all that shit repaired fairly quickly on the basis that the car's still appreciating, isn't it?
Hughes, and we were looking at the roof. The Hughes, the mechanic guy, and I was like, "How would you fix that?" And he went, "Huh, cut roof off," and then motioned a slashing motion at the top of the C pillar. And I was like, "Really?" And he went, "Only way." I mean, my dad was like, you could duct tape and you could put a spoiler and all of that. And I'm like, and you're from the 1950s, Dad. Much as I love you, I couldn't do that. Um, so I had thought, well, maybe I flip it. Maybe I let somebody else, because mechanically it's super strong. I've done, and I should say it's now approaching 158,000 miles. So I've done 30,000 miles in it, right? It's not like I've. So this is why it looks the way it's street parked, and I used it not exclusively, but it and it drives brilliantly, right? It drives well. I say that actually, like at the moment, I think it might need a wheel bearing, and this is the problem with it. So it's been in storage, I would say 6 months, something like that. It sat and it fired up and it ran fine, and apart from this kind of grumbly wheel bearing, which I can't work out if it's a grumbly wheel bearing or if it needs tires at the front. Hugh says it needs tires at the front because it's like cut the tires. Why does it do that? Well, they all do that. So, well, really, I'm sure it didn't do that from the factory. So, but fundamentally, it goes down the road really well, and the motor is strong as the day is long. I still, I'm still astonished by the giddy up to like 120 miles an hour. It's like a sports bike to 120. You just get there without you just flex your right foot and it's awesome experience. Um, but yeah, but bodily now in a bad way. The seat split, so I put tape on. Now the tape splitting. The Ollie swang on the hood ornament and it broke, so now it has a hole. Tire guys um, broke the center cap when they were fitting that. I don't know how you do that, but it's missing a center cap. Um, I quite like it, right? It looks, but it now is looking really long in the.
I mean, if you, it's. I suspect if you put money into it, I guess, you would get more out. If you know what I mean.
That's where I'm going. It needs a massive spend again. I think
Mm.
it needs the kind of spend I spent on it when it was to uh, deal with. So I don't know what to do because mechanically it's sound. So this is what I was going to say. This is what in fact prompted the running report. As I got it back, it's working fine, but I've still spent of the last week 2.5 days on it. Right, this is why I get nothing done on other things, right? Because it needed nothing. It's worked fine. Oh, but I had to change the central locking because you can't leave it anyway if it doesn't lock, right? So, and I guess it has this pneumatic pump that operates the central lock-in, but also things like the headrests that recline and the trunk release. So far, so good, right? That's right. When the pump fails, you can't open the trunk. Like, I yeah, I know you should be able to put the key in and turn it, right? But trust me, that is not. That was not. Um, so I replaced the pump one day, right? Then I go to move it yesterday morning, and I've been thinking, that battery, it's done all the time that I've had it, and it is not like the best quality battery in the first place, Well, sure enough. So then I'm like wrestling around trying to find a jumper and like just I wanted to do my day, not immediately after firefight getting a new battery. Guess how much a new battery costs for a 2002 Mercedes Benz E55 AMG?
Oh, probably north of $100.
300.
Yeah.
No, I mean
Doesn't-
I could have gone for like one that was like $50 less, but that one had less cranking amps, and I just this was not. I didn't buy the most expensive one. I
I bought a little widget actually the other day on Amazon that you plug onto the positive terminal that you can just unscrew and it disconnects the internal connections. So it's disconnected the circuit on the battery. So in order you don't even need to take the thing off, you can just unscrew the thing when you go to leave the car in storage again. I'm going to put it on the Z.
Good idea. I mean, you have to
Yeah.
whatever works for you. I don't have a problem with taking the batteries off, with taking the battery terminals. Hubnut leaves the battery terminals loose so you can just remove it easily, and then wonders why he won't damp start. I'm like, so each to their own, right? As ever with
Mm.
Hubnut, you're like, dude, you collect different stuff from me. You have really odd methods, but whatever works for you. Whatever works for you. My fear with those switches is they just introduce a level of complication that you could have just.
Oh, it's mechanical. It's basically it's because it basically changes when you unscrew it. It sort of physically disconnects two pieces of metal inside. That's why I quite liked it, on the basis that it is basically unscrew it. So I can, and because I don't have to faff around taking it off or taking a screwdriver or something like that with me. If I'm leaving it in a particular area where, in anti-theft becomes much simpler to implement as well. So
yeah. I'm just going to eat this bar. I'm just going to edit out the scrumpling because I can just mute myself. I'm such a master of the editing suite now. Having a low blood sugar moment here. So,
321, rocking along at over 5 and over. Nice.
So to make a pivot to actually talk about why I made an effort to be do this call now, so we can separately talk about this Route 66 road trip, because I have other stuff going on. I'm going to be picking up a free motorcycle. Did you know about this?
I thought you'd bought another one. Or is this one that you've been
since the Zuma
inherited?
The Zuma was the last one I bought, I think.
Oh, okay. Maybe not then.
But somebody offered me a Honda Shadow.
Oh, yeah, okay. So I thought it was the Shadow. Okay,
Yeah.
so you didn't buy that. That was just gifted.
Yeah, I have to go and get it though, and it's in Grass Valley, which is miles away. And I, of course, don't have a pickup truck or indeed any vehicle with a tow hitch to do it. So I rented a truck.
Does it not run?
Sorry?
Does it run?
I mean, they say it does, but it's sat for a bit. It's like some dude who's traveling and it was his bike and he stored the bike with a mate and now he's staying away. So he's just getting rid of all of his stuff. Apparently it ran, but so I don't know whether or not it'll go. I'm assuming that it will, but I
No, I can see why you want to pick it up on the truck.
Well, here's the thing, right? But how am I originally was going to have Jason go with me, but I can't arrange a time when Jason can't do a weekday, and it costs more to rent the truck over a long weekend. I can't rent it just for a day at the weekend. Maybe I could do with a different vendor now that I didn't know about before, but a different. Anyway, and I should say we're endorsing services. United Rentals, who did me who were doing me the pickup truck, they've been really great to work with. Yeah, I've rented a trailer as well with a ramp on it, so I don't need to push it up into the back because I think I'm going to be on my own, or at least with Ollie. So if it runs, I'll just I'll just clutch it up into the trailer, and if it doesn't, I'll push it, and the trailer's got like a big flat ramp on it, and is designed and insured for motorcycles, and I've towed with them before, so I don't know. I'm a bit scared of the fact that it's a cruiser, so it's like bigger and heavier than anything that I'm used to, but that's the adventure. So that's upcoming. So I wanted to, no doubt there'll be a post-adventure report on that, but I wanted to separate that from this road trip that I did last week with Ollie, which was the first proper road trip that he's done. And Vice Grip Garage Derek, the way that he will get a pickup truck and drive it home, and often his son Bentley will go along. Ollie was like, I want to do that, I want to do so Derek and Bentley had done this Route 66 road trip. Well, I drove across the country. I drove some of Route 66. I realized that in California particularly, there's a lot of really rich Route 66 history. You can drive on the real it's like a Roman road in Europe kind of experience that you can drive on the actual tarmac that
Hmm.
that was the original mother road kind of thing. You could do all of that, so I wanted to do it. Um, and Ollie was keen so I thought, I'll do a road trip which ties together a couple of other things. The other thing I wanted to do was the place where they found gold in California is a town called Coloma, not far from Sacramento. And when I was telling Ollie about it and saying I was going to go there, he was like, "Oh, James Marshall, in the tail of a sawmill." And I'm like, "What?" And he knew far more about it than I did because, of course, he'd studied it at school and had been paying attention. So I was like, well, "I can't go on my own if my little sage can't come along with me." So Coloma's one thing, and the other thing that we did was, that rocket plane, the X-15 that we've talked about before, and viewers, if you don't know about, listeners, viewers, what the fuck ever. This X-15 plane is like part firework, part aeroplane, part science experiment, right? Basically, it was, there were two kinds of flights: either how fast you could go or how high you could go, and it was all experimenting with space travel. And I guess once it went wrong and the plane fell into the desert, into the Mojave Desert, and there's a memorial site there. So we went there to see what we could find. And I mean, well, forgive me, I've told you this before, but literally we stayed in some town, Ridgecrest, and then this site is like 55 miles on one road, 17 miles on another road, and then it's like an unpaved road that I would say is probably 2 or 3 miles long. Maybe not. I don't know. I mean, people, viewers, listeners, whatever, pedants can check and see how factually incorrect I am. But when you've driven miles and not seen any cars for ages, and then the GPS is like, it's over there in the scenery up that dirt road, that is a pretty intimidating kind of thing. So, was pleased. Um, well, I'll talk about the truck in a minute, but yeah, it was Coloma, it was this X-15 memorial, and it was um, then go to this place, Seligman, Arizona, which is Radiator Springs from the Cars movie. That was the
Oh, okay.
movie that was the town the movie company more than any other used for inspiration for this notion of old America and new America, and the old America being bypassed by the building of a new superhighway, which, at the time was a physical thing. But of course, now, if we think of it in terms of information superhighways and the way that the tech savvy have left much of rural America, and indeed rural, the developed world generally, is, urban developed world has left behind. There's deep metaphors for. Anyway, so and Ollie enjoyed the Cars movie, so we went to this Radiator Springs place. What we also did unexpectedly was spend 2 days in Vegas, and that was because, I mean, I instead of when I realized that our route was going to be like across the Mojave Desert in July, I was like, maybe my Mustang with its dodgy air conditioning, which, like your BMW, what happens is if people recharge it, often the recharge has a leak sealer in it, because in theory you shouldn't need to recharge it. There must be a leak in the system for you to need to recharge it. So the recharge stuff with the goop in it, that blocks up the machine. So then people's, like the Ford guy that I go to, he doesn't want to fix it because then all the goop's going to go into his machine. He's going to have to clean up his machine. So there must be a better way of fixing air conditioning. But either way, that's the situation with the air conditioning on the Mustang. So I was like, I don't really want to take that car. Well, it was lucky that I didn't, because this dirt road to this major Michael Adams thing, there's no way a V8 Mustang could have made it down there. If I'd have tried, I don't think I'd have wanted to try. And if I'd have tried, we'd have got stuck. And that would not have been an option, because it's fine rolling along at 55 miles an hour with the windows down when it's 120 degrees, which it was, but it is not fine when you stop. Like when and literally, it's like I'm stopping. I'm we're pulled over at the side of the road, and I'm booking a hotel for the night. And first, there's sweat dripping off my nose onto the phone, and then the phone is overheating and needing to be put in the cooler in order to work again for us to be able to book some accommodation for the night before we can get back to our semi air conditioned rolling at 55 miles an hour. So, yeah. So, the truck was from United Rentals. They were a pleasure to deal with, but they don't really do trucks. They mostly just do tools. And I guess I got an awesome rate. But I got an awesome rate on a 2-wheel drive non-crew cab, like day cab truck, and they didn't have that. They gave me a 4-wheel drive crew cab, like at 250, like an F250. It was like I don't know, I knew it was. It had 40,000 miles, but the air con was done. But of course, in San Francisco, I didn't notice that. I only noticed that when we were, you know, on the way out to Coloma, and it was getting warm on the first day, and I was like, oh, the air conditioning, which had seemed to not that powerful in San Francisco, but there, now it was clear it was just moving air around, and there was no air conditioning at all. Yeah. So
that shit
yeah,
sucks. It's
yeah.
brutal.
So we did the Major Michael Adams thing, and then it was like and then I was like, well, we can't come this close to Death Valley and not visit. I don't need to stop. There's not much to see, is there? I mean, I know if you're like into geology and all of that, you can stop. But I wasn't going to try and To be honest, I drove a different road in. I didn't do 190 all the way in. I drove a different road in, and the strata in the rocks was more impressive on the way up the hill into Death Valley than it was actually inside Death Valley. I know in the past I've been to Badwater and had seen, like, I didn't do that this time because it was at one point the temperature gauge on the truck said 124. 124. So the boy was a trooper to be able to put up with it, basically, and not just lose the plot altogether, because there is a measurable difference between 100 and 110 and 110 and 120, and I'd never experienced that before. That was a
You can see why those. Is it? I think it was I saw a thing about Death Valley tourist information people, that even the wardens and stuff there, when it gets above 40, they go out in pairs just to be safe. So that if one of you gets heat stroke or has a bit of a wibble, then there's someone else there to get your ass back. So you can see why it's
yeah. When we were there, a couple of hikers were didn't make it. I didn't know at the time, but afterwards I've read that and it's the classic thing where they'd gone down into the canyon and it'd been hotter down there, and then it was hard work climbing back up out of the canyon. I don't know if one of them had fallen because they weren't discovered together, so I don't know. One of them had like slipped and fallen, or one of them couldn't move further, and the other one had. But either way, really bad news.
Yeah, that's rough. Yeah, no, the guides all told you about that when you did if you do the Grand Canyon trails and the helicopter in and out and stuff. They will say to you, like, walking down's easy, allow sort of 3 or 4 times the amount of time it took you to go down, and plan for, remember you're climbing a mountain on the way out, essentially.
So Coloma, where they discovered gold, was really quite cool. There's like a replica mill by the river, so you can like see what it was like. And then the place where the mill, because the mill's all made of wood, so of course it's gone. But then the place where it was discovered in the river is marked. So I guess what was happening was this guy James Marshall was building the mill, and the mill was by the edge of the water because the saw was going to be driven by a wheel. Um, well, and so what he would do was every night he would um, basically have the water run over and use that to like move the soil that he needed to move to make the mill. Did that so he would go down in the morning and look at what the water had done, basically to help him do his work. So he was down there looking at the spillway, like at the end of the where the river's gone through. It's operated the water mill, the spillway at the end of that was where he saw the gold. He saw like a nugget apparently, and then when he looked, there was when they looked, there was more. Um, so yeah, so the gold rush is born right there. So that was pretty cool. We drove from there. Do you know? I'm not sure if you've ever driven it in your visits to California. Highway 395, which is the road that runs up the back of the Sierra Nevadas. It's in California, but it runs up the back of the Sierra Nevadas. It's a really picturesque road. If you've not driven it, it is one to really drive. We so from Coloma we crossed over the Sierra Nevadas and then drove all the way down 395, which I've wanted to do for years and years and years. And then that night we were in Ridgecrest. Then we did the Major Michael Adams. Then we crossed Death Valley the next day, and then we just holed up in Vegas for a couple of days. Recovering
Bits
from the
of it.
fact.
I haven't driven all of it. Bits of it.
Yeah, it's worth it's worth doing all of it. The Route 66 thing as well. That was really an awesome thing. Um, I had driven it as far as like Bakersfield, and then had come north to San Francisco when I was driving across the country. Um, it is across in the further west you go, the more sections of the road are complete. And from Seligman, there's whole around Seligman, around this town, Amboy, there's whole sections of the road which are absolutely complete. Um, as you get towards, we spent the night in Barstow, but between, basically between Seligman and Victorville, and Victorville's where it becomes like LA sprawl. Basically, a lot of that you can drive the actual original road, and it's not like jamming through town centers. It's really like there was one section, there was one mountain pass that we did where it was like switchbacks with 15-mile-an-hour turns, and you're reminded I mean that section must have been bypassed in the 1940s or something, because it's like switchback road. Because remember, Route 66 is designated Route 66, the Lincoln Highway or whatever it was called. It was called Route 66 in 1926, but the road continually evolved. So Route 66 as a contiguous route was already gone by the 1960s. So if you think about our parents' generation going west to California, the American version of our parents' generation going west to California, they weren't driving on this winding road across that was what was happening in the 1920s. That was not but it was surprising that at one point we pulled over the side of the road to take a leak and then sort ourselves out a little bit, and I said to Ollie, we could roll in the middle of the road, couldn't we? Because there was no cars coming. And the next minute he was in the middle of the road rolling backwards and forwards, being like, I rolled on Route 66. So yeah, we lived the dream, so to speak. Um, we also went to LA. So we ended by going into LA, and I did think, what can I, what can I do with him, which is in keeping, and we went to the end of Route 66 in LA is right in Santa Monica. I guess there's two endings. Once ended in like on 7th Street in downtown LA. Well, I don't know if you know what downtown LA is like now, but the last time I was there, which is, albeit it was 10 years ago, it was unpleasant. So Ollie and I bypassed that and went to the end of Route 66 from the 30s, which is Santa Monica, which is Olympic and Lincoln, the intersection of Olympic and Lincoln, which is right where, if you come off at the right intersection on the freeway, which we did more by chance than by skill, more just because that was the way that I used to drive when I used to go into Santa Monica with Mark all those years ago. We would, it was that intersection. So that was quite cool. So you maybe know this, you maybe don't. Carroll Shelby's original factory was in Santa Monica. It's called Santa Monica now. It's called Marina Del Rey. There, they moved the border between what's Marina Del Rey and what's Santa Monica. But so the very first factory, Carter Street, that was gone and replaced by like modern high-rise flats when I visited, like, I don't know, like early 2000s, right, when I was round the corner, 1042 Princes Street. You know that clip of film where Shelby's stood with the Cobra and he's like, my name's Carroll Shelby and performance is my business. And behind him, there's a brick building with these high, narrow windows. That building is 1042 Princes Street. And years ago, you might remember, you could actually get in the back of it, and I've got photos of my Mustang parked up at the same spot as the Cobra. And that was probably 10 years ago now. You might remember I went back to get some photos one time, and they put a gate in, and it was a children's talent agency. And I was there with that brown van, the molester van, and so that was really a weird thing with me, like taking pictures and like, why are you taking pictures? And so this strange LA story of the founding of Cobra now, the home of the Cobra now being this weird. Well, now the business is in different use. They've modified the entrance to the building so it has a roll-up door. The gate's still there, so it's changed. So Ollie and I went there, and I got more photos. They're basically turning the whole area from light industrial into, like, it's gentrifying into townhomes. And all of the and the townhomes, you can only access it one way. There's all these cul-de-sacs to make sure that the streets are quiet. So it's really annoying because the GPS wasn't caught up, and you're in LA traffic in this giant bloody pickup truck which doesn't fit anywhere. It was, so that was a bit of excitement. So I did the only natural thing, and what I planned to do, which was run out to Malibu along PCH. Now, do you know that turning you may do at the bottom of, I think it's Lincoln, where you turn left to go down onto PCH from Santa Monica? And it's like a left-right on-ramp, old piece of concrete. And I wanted to take Ollie there because I was there once with Mark. I was on one of his bikes, like an RGB 250, before it overheated. Only rode it once, overheated it, two-stroke, didn't get it then, wished had understood it better. Now didn't understand what it was there. It was just slow and noisy and smelly and hard to ride to me then, which now I'd sell a kidney to have one, but didn't know then. Mark's on the super motard, away from the lights. He's up on one wheel and then did the full S down onto the beach on the rear wheel. And I've got an image in my mind of him on the rear wheel with the beach, the Baywatch beach, with the towers, that you remember from Baywatch as a teenager. And so it's one of my great LA images. So I wanted Ollie to see that spot. So we did. We drove round to Paradise Cove, And I forgive me, I mentioned this to you before. The service was shit, and the food was shit too. And I still love the place because it's so cool sitting on the beach with the toes in the sand, and they do a good margarita. And I'm not that picky about the food really. And you can walk on the beach afterwards, and that's what Ollie and I did. Strolled along the beach afterwards, and then
Hmm.
went back into Malibu, went in a supermarket, bought some ice cream, and sat in the car park of the Ralphs in Malibu, eating ice cream, generally feeling like the cat that got the cream.
Yeah,
I,
I approve of that.
yeah, I am glad to hear it. Um, what I want to do now, and this is following the agenda. I just want to pay tribute to one of the other guys that I'm a Pebble docent with, and this is for anybody who's seen that movie, Ford versus Ferrari. In Ford versus Ferrari, the early scene takes place at 1052 Princeton, right? The scene where, but then there is another. Then subsequent scenes take place at the factory out at the airport, and the testing takes place out at the factory out at the airport. The reason for that move was Ford's deal with Shelby to turn the Mustang, the Security's car, which Shelby quote, turn the Mustang into the GT350 and make it taken seriously in motorsport. Like the guy, Shelby hired a guy to complete that move and build the production line for the Shelby GT350. His name is Bruce Jr. He's 94 years old, and I do Pebble Beach with him each year. Super spry, super with it. He's written a book. I'll put a link in for it. It's like self-published. It's that's his only. Literally, he was hired to do the move, and that was it. And he worked, but this is in years to come, this kind of direct link with these mythical, legendary, historical figures within motorsport, this will seem that the more awesome, especially when normal cars aren't gas powered. We're very quickly getting to a stage where normal cars aren't gas powered. So the whole Cobra story and motorsport, and because it ties to the X15, because it's this period where you just went out and drove, you went out and flew, and you saw what happened. And yes, there were some casualties, but that's the price of progress. And we're not, as a society, we're not in that place anymore, are we? I'm not sure whether that's right or wrong. But that's Bruce
Mhm.
Jr. I was going to say the other thing that really brought back some memories for me, being around Paradise Cove, being up and down PCH, was back when Mark lived in Topanga Canyon with the dude that was the star of the Sex and the City movie. Um, at that time, my Honda CBR track bike lived in that house in Topanga Canyon as well. And Mark and I would get out and ride quite a lot in the canyon roads around LA. And it was surprising to me that as I was coming along PCH, both to Paradise Cove and coming back again, what I was thinking of was the CBR. I'd not realised that that's probably the most I rode that bike was down in LA and around there, and how I might not have done a million miles on that bike. I've probably only done like 3 or 4 thousand miles on it. But it's the quality of the miles, not the amount of the miles, I suppose, that I was thinking about.
Yeah, definitely. That's a mantra you should apply to motorbikes, definitely.
So on Mark's profundity, it's as the two Ronnies used to say, it's goodbye from me and it's goodbye from him, because this is future John, editor John interrupting. We talked for so long when I recorded this last one, like even with all the edit bits I'm going to trim out, 2.5 hours, that I thought I'd make this into 2 episodes. So this is only part one, and I guess part two or episode 12 is going to be the the next thing that I edit that was recorded at the same time, but through the magic of the editing process, is not going to be like that for you.